Welcome to the Motherhood Reimagined podcast, where we celebrate all paths to motherhood. I'm your host, Sarah Kowalski. Whether you're contemplating becoming a single mother, trying to be one, or already raising kids, this is the place for inspirational stories, expert advice, and informative guides celebrating those who didn't follow the rules as they share the heartache and joys of their paths. Be informed, be inspired, because you do not need to feel alone. Hello and welcome to today's show. A couple of announcements before we get started. If you haven't already, please subscribe and leave a review for the show. You can do that in iTunes or Stitcher or anywhere you listen to podcasts. It really helps me get the word out and keep this project running, so I'd really appreciate it. I also wanted to mention my memoir, which you can get anywhere books are sold. I wrote it because I really wanted to share my journey and my struggles so that other women wouldn't feel alone. I go into great depth about how I dealt with the emotional ups and downs and making the choice, letting go of the fairy tale of what I wanted, and how I moved forward and how I used all the difficult parts to really teach me how to be an amazing mother. So I hope you'll get your copy and let me know what you think. And finally, stick around at the end of the show, please. I have lots of announcements about Tribe. I want to give you a really detailed picture of what's involved and give you the coupon code so you can sign up before the price goes up. Now let's get started. Today I'm joined with Brooke. Hi, Brooke. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I always like to start out by asking people, as a child, what did you expect for your life? What did you envision was going to happen?
I think as a child, I don't remember having a specific vision of like white picket fence or church wedding or like anything like that. I think I was sort of a kid, was an only child. I had sort of stars in my eyes. I was a dramatic child. I went to high school for performing arts, that kind of thing. I don't think I had a specific vision, but it never occurred to me that I wouldn't have kids or wouldn't get married or anything like that. I think I thought I would travel and I don't know, just sort of, I guess, probably live similar to the way that I was growing up. Mm-hmm. I have a large extended family, that kind of thing.
Mm. And tell us what did your path to motherhood or end up looking like?
So I traveled a lot for work through my late 20s and most of my 30s. And I think I always just felt sort of socially awkward and I didn't date a lot. I traveled a lot. I focused a lot on work. And in my mid 30s, I started sort of focusing more on that aspect, like, lifey things like, I should probably think about this now, force myself to. So I did all of the matchmaking things, Match, eHarmony, real life matchmakers, the whole speed dating, all the things that you do when you're in your mid 30s and you don't have a wide social network, I guess, to meet people. And I turned 40 and hadn't met anybody and just thought, if I'm going to do it, I have to do it. So yeah, I guess that's it. I mean, I pretty much just decided that was my stopping point, I guess. Mm-hmm. I don't know that was an intent. I don't know that was a forethought, but that was my cutoff when I hit 40. There was sort of a trigger. So about a month before I turned 40, I had rejoined eHarmony, which I'd been off of that sort of scene for a while. I lived in a small town in New Hampshire at the time, so it was sort of hard anyway to date. There wasn't a huge, I guess, there weren't a lot of people there on those kinds of services. So anyway, I had rejoined eHarmony and I kind of forgot that I had done it. Like I did it probably like late one night or something, and I used an alternate email for it. And then after I turned 40, I kind of remembered it. And maybe it had been out there for about a month. I went out and looked at it and I had some matches. I happened to look at my profile and on it, I saw where it said like age 40, have kids, no, want kids, yes, never married. And I thought, I'm undateable. Nobody at my age that doesn't even make sense. Nope. I am not somebody who people are going to want to go, because by then people have had their kids, they're divorced, they're, or they don't want them or like that and so that was really the ultimate thing that was the big aha for me to make me go down the path I went.
Awesome. So it sounds like it was like it didn't take you long once you kind of had that epiphany to decide to do it.
No, it didn't.
Yeah. Wow. Great. And tell us about, you have kids now or a child now. Can you tell us a little bit about how that ended up once you made the choice?
Sure. So I have twin boys now. They're 6.5. So I happen to have had a friend who was married and who waited until she was 43. So she didn't get married till she was 40. And I mean, she was, 40, I think. Anyway, so she had to use an egg donor. So I was aware of that concept already.
Mm-hmm.
I had been through that with her. So, which was great because it got me to donors a lot faster.
Mm-hmm.
I think I didn't have to process as much to get to that point. So, but I didn't have any reason to think that I would need an egg donor. Both of my grandmothers actually had children at 40. So 50, 60 years ago. Mm-hmm. So in my brain, I was like I was great. So it never occurred to me that this would be an issue, of course. So anyway, I decided to just start looking. I Googled, I found a sperm bank that I liked. I chose the sperm bank. It was Fairfax. I kept being drawn to the same one for whatever reason. And there weren't a ton of them. And
a ton of donors or a ton of sperm banks?
A ton of sperm banks.
Okay.
There were only really I don't know if there are more now. Maybe there are more now, but there were really only a handful that I found that were the reputable, the big ones, Fairfax, California. I can't quite think of that. There was one other one that was out there, but anyway, So anyway, I chose a donor. Well, I chose a couple of donors. I, went through the process of choosing a donor. I tried to find one that looked like my family, that had the same coloring. I wanted the kid to look like me, or at least, look like they belonged to my extended family, and had the characteristics that I liked and that were part of my family also. Like, I have a musical family. So I looked for music, not talent necessarily, but musical ability, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Or inclination maybe. And also like traveling. I love to travel. So somebody who wanted to travel, somebody who had, who was smart. I was big on the intelligence aspect of it. I wanted smart donor, that kind of thing. So I found a couple. I narrowed it down to 2. And then I ordered like the full profile of them that at Fairfax at the time. Again, I don't know how it is today, but they offered, you could buy the audio of the donor's interview. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to hear their voices. So I had narrowed it down to 2. There's one that I had been on to early that I kept going back to him. I was drawn to that donor. And when I ordered the audio, I knew that was the one. I could, same one. So I picked him.
I personally think the audio is really, really telling. What was it about the audio that made it so clear to you? Or do you remember?
I do. And I still have it. I haven't listened to it in a long time, but I do still have it. The audio was so telling. There was just something about the cadence of his voice, the tone of his voice, and how easy he talked to the interview. He had just an ease and a relaxed way about him, and his voice. It was just sort of that kind of way. He was very laid back and had an easy laugh, that kind of thing. The other one I picked, he probably didn't say 5 words before I went, nope. But it's so weird, just somebody's voice. So but it was.
Yeah, I found that it was for me, the easiest way to sort of have this very intuitive yes or no. It's like I could pore over the details in the profiles forever. But the minute I heard their voice, it was like the yes or no was so clear for me. But it's interesting because I've talked to a lot of people who don't find the audio useful at all. So I just like,
that's interesting. I would think that, it really sort of gives you the sense of somebody's personality and
that's how I felt about it. Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Weird.
So then tell us more about how after you picked the sperm donor, did you find a fertility clinic or did you go to your OBGYN?
I ended up going to Manhattan to the clinic where my friend had gone. So she had ended up with twin girls. And so that was really my only exposure to that kind of experience. So I just went where she went, and I did not have a great experience at that clinic. So I did the cycle with them, but the nurse there that I dealt with she wasn't as kind or gentle as I would have liked, I guess, for my first experience through this, because it's an emotional thing. It's a hard thing to do. And I was by myself doing it. And, it's hard. So you want somebody to have a little bit of compassion or something. So anyway, I tried for my own eggs. I got had two follicles, one egg produced. And I was in a hotel room in New York.
I'm sorry, was that IVF or IUI?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, IVF. So
okay.
My FSH was very high. So I went straight to IVF. There was no messing around with IUI. And it was going to be pretty low chances anyway. You feel like you have to try. I mean, well, not everybody does, but I did. I mean, I'm going to try for my own eggs. Again, I had superstar genetics with my grandmothers, right? So I did the egg retrieval, and she called me. They called me later. I don't remember if it was I think it was later that day, and told me that the egg was not viable. And I had never been through this before, so I didn't exactly know what all the terminology meant at the time. And when I asked for more information, she said, the egg is dead. And I went, okay.
What does that mean? Right. Yeah.
So I left. I went home and said, okay, now what do I do? So I had started down the path already of looking for egg. I wasn't really looking for an egg donor, but I had already gone out to a site and started sort of looking at egg donor agencies, and that was already sort of out there for me when my FSH was so high. So I went back and really looked into that again. And I found an egg donor that I liked. And I kind of became married to her. Like, she was the one. She could have walked out of my family at any given moment. She looked just like my family. She was smart. Whatever. She had all the things, but I couldn't decide if I should try for my own again. So I wavered, and I kind of went back and forth with the donor agency, and they were wonderful, but I just couldn't decide. And so I finally decided to use her, and I called, and the day before I called, she had been chosen by somebody else.
Oh no.
Yeah. But that was okay, because for a couple of reasons. I thought, well, then I meant to try for my own again. Okay. And then also, she agreed to do a cycle for me after that cycle of the other people. So, so I could wait for her, which was nice. So I went ahead and I switched clinics. I moved to a clinic in St. Louis. I went through a cycle there. I got to St. Louis to do my egg retrieval, and my follicles had stopped growing. So we canceled the cycle. The cycle got canceled when I was there. And so that was hard, but it was okay again, because it was a long shot, which I knew, and because I had her already lined up. But it was going to take several months for her to get through the cycle she was on. And then there's a mandatory 2-month or something waiting period after one cycle before you can do another cycle. So it looked like my cycle with her was going to start in February or something. Then her cycle got postponed or delayed. So I ended up waiting about 10 months.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So finally it came. We did the cycle, and with the same clinic in St. Louis, went to the egg retrieval. I stayed in New Hampshire because it was going to be a 5-day retrieval. So I didn't need to be there the day of the retrieval. I just needed to go, within 5 days. But it's actually kind of hard to even still talk about. They waited too long to do the surgery after the trigger shot. And so she ovulated all my eggs out. Well, I mean, she didn't, but her body did. So when they did the egg retrieval, she had 25 follicles that were all empty. Yeah. So that was pretty devastating. That was very, very hard time.
And did they assume fault for it and pay for the cycle or give you any discount or anything? No.
No.
Wow.
No, in fact, they tried to blame it on her and said that she did not do the trigger shot right. But I know that that's not the case for several reasons, not the least of which is that was not her first cycle. She wasn't a rookie at it, So I could tell. I got all the medical records, and I poured over them. In that kind of situation, I go into sort of like a research mode
Mm-hmm.
where I was going to find out and figure out, like I was an investigator. I was going to figure out what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I could tell from the timing of everything of when they told her to do the trigger shot, when she would have done it. And then when they did the surgery, it was 39 and a half hours. And they should have done it. I think it's between 35 and 36 hours or something like that. So it doesn't make sense that she would have that many follicles and every single one be empty, right?
Right.
So anyway, yeah. So that was really, really hard. And I, cried for a couple of days on that. And then I picked myself up, which is actually sort of unlike me historically. When I was younger, I was a wallower. I picked myself up and said, I don't have time for this. Mm-hmm. You can feel bad about this if you want, Brooke, but there's no time. You better go figure out. Like now I'm TikTok, right? Now I'm 41 and a half. I'd been started the whole process at 40. I'd waited 10 months for her. I don't have time to wait and be sad. So I started researching again, clinics, and I switched clinics to Oregon Reproductive Medicine in Portland, Oregon. Yeah.
I was going to ask, so when you went so you picked clinics pretty far away from your home. So originally St. Louis and then Portland what was your kind of criteria that you were basing your choice on the clinics?
Yeah. So the first clinic I went with was in Manhattan, which wasn't too far away. And then when that didn't work, I went to a clinic. I looked where I was, like in Boston and New Hampshire area. And I went and interviewed at two of them. And when I walked in, they both said they would not try for my own eggs with me. That I had to use donor eggs if I wanted to do that. And I didn't want to do that. I probably more didn't want to be told that they wouldn't work with me. So it was just sort of a turnoff on that whole thing. And I was like, oh, you just care about your statistics and, you don't really care about what the patient wants. And I'm going to pay you for this. Like, just do what I want. So I ended up going with the one in St. Louis because it was an affiliate or the same company as the one in Manhattan. And I liked the doctor when I met with him. And so that one, it was good. I mean, I was fine with that. But after what happened, I was not fine. So at that point, when I started researching clinics, I started looking at the statistics of the clinics mostly and looked at the statistics for donor eggs or donor eggs, I guess, and donor embryos in 40 plus year old people, that kind of thing. So there were a couple that were the very highest. It was Denver, San Diego, and Portland.
And were you looking on the SART, like SART.org for that? Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yes, I was. So I kind of forgot about this until just now, actually. After the egg retrieval tragedy, I went down to, my mom has a condo in the mountains in Georgia. And so we went there for a few days just to get away. And that's when I started researching other stuff. And I happened to talk to the person at the egg donor agency. And she told me that the clinic where this girl who I had chosen had done a cycle before me was in Oregon. And I had just come across, I'm sure this is still out there, but I can't remember the name of it right now. It's an egg donation. It was like a listserv at the time. And a woman ran it. And I can't remember what happened, but I must have sent her a message or something. And she ended up calling me on the phone. And her clinic had been Portland IVF, which is now Oregon Reproductive Medicine. And then I talked to the agency, and that was the same clinic and the same doctor. And I was sort of like a sign. And because I had already been looking at it because of the statistics, he had really good statistics. And so I from there, I mean, it was like in 2 weeks, I flew out to Portland to meet that Dr. Hessla at ORM. And so that's how I ended up switching to him, is it was strictly on statistics. He actually had been the doctor that did the retrieval for my first donor. And it was so intertwining that he was not big on her. because he said she'd not been a superstar. So when I wanted to use her again, because she'd agreed to do it for me again, I mean, she was as devastated as well, maybe not quite as much, but she was still pretty upset that that had all happened.
Yeah.
He was willing to do it, but he was kind of like, I don't know if you'll really get that much. She didn't produce like a vast number of eggs for the last one, that kind of thing. So in the end, I chose a different donor. I didn't do it through the clinic. Did it back through the same egg donor agency. And I chose a donor that had not been a donor before. Also risky, but whatever, it's all risky. Mm-hmm. And I chose her more on her characteristics, I guess, and less on her physical, some on her physical. She had light eyes like me and most of my family and that kind of thing. But there was one picture of her. She was a traveler. She had lots of other characteristics that, I liked. There was one picture of her in her reel of pictures that looked just like one of my cousins. So I didn't have the strong physical connection to her like I did the first donor, where I felt like she could be in my family. But this one picture looked just like one of my cousins. And that gave me that connection to her. Mm-hmm. And so that's who I chose. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, in the end, she is also the product of a sperm donor, which is a whole different conversation. Which is very interesting. It's interesting because I know stuff about that too. So yeah, it's weird.
Wow. And so when you went to Portland, tell us how it turned out.
Sure. So I went to Portland in July, met with Dr. Hesla. He was willing to take me on. Mm-hmm. And I started a cycle with the second donor and with them. And had to go out there a couple of times and had to fly her there a couple of times we had to do the psychological evaluation, and there were several different tests that I had done because he was trying, that he really wants his success. They like their statistics. So I went out there a few times, and then I finally went out in December for my for my transfer. And I flew out from Boston and stayed in a hotel in downtown Portland and took a cab there and got acupuncture while I was there and got the retrieval and came back and stayed horizontal for 24 hours and flew home.
Nice.
And waited. Yeah.
Okay. And then took a pregnancy test 2 weeks later, I'm guessing.
I did. Yep. And it was positive. So that was good. That was a good sign. Mm-hmm. And we had transferred 2 embryos. He wasn't super keen on that because he felt like I was young enough that if one didn't take, I could do it again. Mm-hmm. He was very hesitant to do two because of the idea of me being single and having twins. Mm-hmm. I didn't care. I wanted twins. I did, but because I'm an only child. Mm-hmm. So if I was going to do it by myself, I wanted them to have each other. Right. So so when I think about it now, I laugh at myself, but at the time I was down with that. I want twins. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They need a sibling, and I don't know if I'll be able to do this twice. So, and he agreed, reluctantly, but he obviously wasn't that adamant about it, but he wasn't a super big fan of it. So I came home, I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive, and I laid very, very low. I tried to just keep that, whatever it was, I didn't know if it was twins yet, in there. I slipped on ice about 4 weeks after the transfer and had some bleeding. Mm. And so freaked out. Fortunately, it was all fine. And yeah, I ended up with twins.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. And how old are your twins now?
They're 6.5 now.
Oh, awesome. Very cool. So I want to come back to kind of asking you about support and having twins and that kind of thing. But I first want to ask you, do you have any regrets about how it all turned out?
Well, I certainly don't have any regrets about how it turned out, because if I did, then I wouldn't have the kids I have, right? So in general, I wish that things had gone, I don't know, not really. Mm-hmm. I shouldn't even, it's hard to even say that. Not really.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were to look at it overall, I would say I wish I'd started sooner. I wish I'd not been so self-conscious. I wish I had looked for husbands sooner, whatever. But ultimately, no. Mm-hmm. They're my little boys. They're awesome.
Awesome. And what's the most surprising thing about how it all turned out?
I think the most surprising thing to me has been how positive the reaction has been. When you're going through something yourself and you feel like you're the only person that's ever done it or that knows what it is, and you don't know anybody else who's done it. So it feels like a secret thing. It was almost could have felt shameful in a way. There was an aspect of being embarrassed and sad that I had not been able to figure out the husband thing. And so you feel worse about it. I think not everybody, obviously, but I think I felt worse about it at the time. And I was concerned for a long time about what other people thought. And so I think that the positive reaction that I've had about it I've had no negative reaction, has been surprising to me.
Mm-hmm. That's nice to hear, for sure. And do you think, I like to sort of capture, I talk to so many women who are in the midst of making the choice around egg donation, and there's so much concern and fear about whether or not they're going to bond with their baby or whether there's going to be issues. Can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be the mother of two kids that you're not genetically related to?
Sure. It's you don't ever really think about it. It never crosses. I mean, I shouldn't say that. It does cross my mind sometimes, but not often. It's rare. Every so often, something will sort of flutter by me that will kind of remind me of that. But it's not any different than people who adopt kids it's not a thing. It's not a thing. I think I can understand that concern, but it is a fear that is ultimately wiped out. I think they're my kids.
Yeah. And have you started to have any conversations with your kids about their origins?
So only kind of recently. They're only 6, so, they don't really get it, but they have always heard me say things like, well, they're donor babies. Or, at a doctor's appointment, they'll ask you for family medical history. Does something run in your family? I'll say yes and then go, oh, but not in their family. Yes, diabetes runs in my family. Oh, but not theirs because, they're donor babies. So they've always kind of heard that phrase, and it's never been a secret. It's never been a hush hush thing. But they were little and they didn't really understand it. So not long ago, one of them asked me a question. I can't even remember what it was, but it prompted me to go out and find a book about it that somebody had written, and I ordered it. And we read it. And so they sort of got that. I've always had sort of family, like the Todd Parr book about families being different. And, I've always done that kind of thing, like, because they're a family of just a mom, they don't have a dad. So, that's okay. All families are different. We're all different colors. We're all different shapes. We're all different sizes, that kind of thing. So I've always done that kind of stuff with them. But anyway, so I had this one book that I got, and it taught, I can't even remember exactly how it described it, but it explained it to some extent about how, I got an egg from somebody else, basically. And I had one of the boys, one was more interested than the other. And one of them said immediately, so she's our mother? Like, horrified. And I was like, no. And I had to go into an explanation about, if somebody gives something to you, is it yours? Is it theirs still? That kind of thing. The other one was pretty quiet about it. And it came out a couple of days later, which is sort of typical him. He's a thinker. And he said one day out of the blue, something about, remember the girl that gave you the pearl that got us, or something weird like that, called them pearls. I don't recall that I ever said that's what that she had given me, but I finally figured out what he was talking about. And I was like, yeah, he wanted to know her name. He asked me if I thought she was special, that kind of thing. And so, I let it come out whenever it comes out, whenever the sort of opportunity is there. Cause I don't want it to be a thing. It's just the way this happened. It doesn't change anything. So yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. And have you been in touch with, I don't know, through the sperm donor or even the egg donor, any donor siblings? Or
no?
I should correct my language because people who shared the same donor.
Yeah. So, people are so tricky. I'm not.
I know that.
Whatever.
I just know some people don't like the term donor sibling and they don't want that to be equated. And so I try to be very careful to say someone who used the same donor, because I think you have to be, it's respectful. And then you kind of decide what the relationship is and what the language is.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I have not. I am on the donor sibling registry, but I've not put us out there, but I eyeball the donor to see, and we don't have any out there yet. What's interesting is the other one, my second choice guy, does have some out there. I just saw this not long ago. I don't go out there much, but every so often I'll think about it and I'll go out. Like I'll probably, now that we're talking about it, I'll go out there again and look. So so it is sort of an interesting thing. But no, we don't. But I'm not opposed to that. I'm not opposed to it. It's one of those things. I'll have to see how I feel if somebody does show up there.
Cool. And so then, as a single mom bringing home 2 babies from the hospital, how did you cope, and what advice would you give to women about developing a support system?
Yeah. So I had sort of a unique scenario when I was pregnant, doing IVF and got pregnant. My mom, I'd been living in New Hampshire. My mom was up there as well, but she had been taking care of my grandmother in Florida, which is where I grew up. So she was mostly in Florida. So when I was probably 3 months pregnant, it was 14 weeks. I came to Florida to tell my family because nobody really knew I had been doing it, but very few people. So I came to tell my large extended family that I was pregnant and having twins, whatever. But I had really planned to stay in New Hampshire. But it really became pretty clear that that was not a smart idea. And because my grandmother had been aging, my mom was down here more, and I knew more and more that I was going to need her help. So I ended up moving to Florida when I was 6 months pregnant, and then went in the hospital 2 weeks later with preeclampsia. So I was in the hospital for 5 weeks and had them at 32 weeks on the nose.
Wow.
So when I came home from the hospital, I came home to a house full of boxes because I had just moved here.
Wow.
So, and the boys were in the NICU. So, and I'd had a C-section. My preeclampsia did not leave me. So a lot of times they say, when you deliver the placenta, the preeclampsia, you're getting rid of the disease and it's over. Sometimes it doesn't actually be over and it wasn't for me. So I stayed sick for a long time. So, for several weeks. So eventually, fortunately, because I had just moved back and I have a pretty large extended family, everybody wanted to do something, which was awesome and help. And I had a lot of support, probably more than I probably wasn't nearly as grateful at the time than I am now. I need to go back and revisit that, tell people thanks again, because it was hard. I'd been in New Hampshire without anybody, and I'd lived by myself my whole adult life. I was very independent and doing my own thing. And all of a sudden I had a bunch of people in my space, and that was really, really hard. And I couldn't do things because I was sick still. So I needed to rely on a lot of people that I was not used to doing that. And that was hard. So I would say that the biggest thing is to let people help you. Accept the help and ask for help. People want to help, just like you want to help. I want to help. When somebody needs something, I'm happy to help, want to. So other people do too. So for me, it was a huge learning lesson to try and to allow other people to do things for me. I also sought out eventually, finally, after like 8 months, I went and found a moms of multiple group here. Highly recommend that. Whether you're having multiples or not, I would recommend that people go find a tribe early, because you need other people in the same situation. So I moved back to where I grew up, and I live near friends that I grew up with who had kids in college and married even. And none of my friends had small children because they'd already had them all. None of them were single, so my friends, I moved back to where I grew up, where I had friends already, but I didn't really fit with those friends anymore. So you need to go figure out what kind of tribe you need and find it. And if you can't find it, make it, because you need it.
And so after they were, things calmed down a little, you still had twins. How have you built support throughout their lives? Because I would imagine with twins, as a single mom, it's a never ending project.
Yeah, and it changes, right, as they get older. And it's all kids, but with 2, being outnumbered that way is definitely a challenge sometimes. Some things get a lot easier, some things get harder. I've been really, really lucky. My mom she has them right now. They're off school today for planning day. And she's the co-parent, like it or not. She is their coach. She's my co-parent. And so that's been great. I also have been really lucky I have lots of aunts here and uncles and cousins and we don't see them as much now that the boys are in school and stuff as we used to, but that were very integral parts of their babyhood and toddlerhood and still are, and who love them so, so much. So I also became really good friends with my neighbors whom, I moved in here and was like this crazy single person, but then I wasn't here for I bought the house, then I wasn't here for a long time. And then I came home with 2 babies so I've got a great neighborhood network also now. And then of course the parents of multiples group. I'm not as involved now that the boys are a little bit older, but having a mom group is good. So I think I just sort of now the boys are in 1st grade. Now I've met parents of school friends too, that I've become friends with. So yeah, I think you have to sort of look for and allow the support to come, but you have to allow it. And when I don't know this, I shouldn't say this about everybody. I've been on my own for so long. I didn't need help. So it is extra hard then, I think, to go ask and accept help and support because you're not used to needing it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I'm incredibly independent and it's interesting. And I think most of my friends assume I'm so capable and independent that I have to sort of remind them, like, I am capable and independent, but I need your help.
Yeah. That's a really good point too, because a lot of times people don't offer or because they don't think you need it. And you think, I may not actually need the help, but I could use the support or the offer or it's the kindness. What's good about that is it's allowed me to recognize that in myself with other people as well, and to not assume that I shouldn't, if I feel like I should offer help, then I do, and that's what I tell other people as well.
Right. And what has working as a single mom been like for you?
Blah, blah. Oh, sorry.
We don't have to talk about it.
You can scratch that. No. So I had a corporate job. I was a director of a department in a large company. And I was lucky that I had that job when I had the boys. I had a lot of support from my supervisor, from my leadership and that kind of stuff. I worked remotely. So I worked from home. So even when I went in the hospital, I just kept working because what else was I going to do? I just kept working from the hospital. So I had a lot of support and that kind of thing. But there was a change, a big reorganization at some point. I think the boys were probably 18 months or so. And it sort of went downhill. So I ended up quitting my corporate job when the boys were 3.5. And it became too much for me. It wasn't the work. It was just the environment. I needed to probably have quit before then. So it was a lot. I was working a lot. I was working about 80, 90 hours a week. And my mom was basically raising the boys. And it was a real toxic environment for me at the time. So I quit and started freelancing. I was lucky in that I could do that in the same field that I had been in with one of the customers that I knew of in my field. So they kept me that. And I started going back. I had written half a book about having the boys. So I started revisiting that. Okay, let's finish your book. I started a blog. Let's do a blog. Started looking at other things and really figuring out kind of what do I want to do? How do I want the rest of my life to go? I was really lucky that I was able to freelance for a couple of years. It gave me a great downtime and some flexibility with the boys. They were 3.5 when I left my job in that environment. And I just took another one. I mean, it's a much better situation, but I took another sort of corporate type job about almost a year ago now, but I still work from home. I still have lots of flexibility. I don't know how people do it where they have to get up and get dressed and go to an office every day. And that's hard. So being able to work from home, I have the flexibility if I need to go get somebody from school or something like that. My mom still steps in a lot for keeping them during working time and that kind of thing. But I am happy to be able to do it from home where I can do laundry and that kind of stuff at the same time. That said, I don't want to do that forever. So I'm pretty focused right now on my other sort of avenues of my entrepreneurial avenues, if you will.
Nice. Awesome. Cool. Okay. Thank you for that. So what advice would you give someone if they were struggling at that choice point of doing it alone and needing to use an egg donor?
I think the advice that I have now is not advice that I would have taken. So take that for what that is. But it is, do it. If you feel it in your heart, don't wait too long. You know, I feel like I waited for Mr. Right. I waited and waited, and I kept thinking it was going to happen, and maybe it was going to happen. And really, I wish I hadn't waited so long. There's a lot of agony, a lot of heartache in there that was unnecessary, I guess. So I wished that I'd had my FSH tested sooner, like when I was 30 or something. So I would have had my own decisions, my own options to freeze my eggs or whatever, but I didn't. And so, as you noted very early on in this conversation, once I made the decision, like it was like, boom, the decision was made and I was moving. But the agony leading up to that was, you know, it takes a long time. And so I would say in general, I would not wait. If you feel like it in your heart, do it, and you can.
Right. I guess that assumes that you have enjoyed being a single mom, or you think it's feasible. What would you say about being a single mom?
It's definitely feasible. I mean, it's not easy, but I don't think being a mom in general is easy. Like even with another parent there, I don't think that's easy either. So, I mean, there are so many wonderful things about it, you know, all the love, so much love. It's not even describable. But it's hard, you know, it's hard to manage it. It's hard to manage the house. And with twins, they're in different classes. And so, you know, you try to be involved. If there's a Valentine's party at school in each class, I got to go to both of them. How do I go? How do I do both things? Those kinds of things. But I think that's no matter what it is, being a mom is hard. So I would tell you, I guess, in general, I don't really think about it like, oh, I love being a single mom or anything like that. I don't think about it that way. I love being a mom. I do wish that I had somebody else here sometimes. I mean, often, not often, but sometimes I need somebody else to take them away so I don't have to, and I keep my babysitter isn't available, or it doesn't cost me to do that. I need somebody to take them out so I can do something, or stay here with me with them so I can go do something. You know, it's hard to be responsible for everything, I guess, in general, but you know, all the finances, I mean, it all weighs on single moms. And I will tell you, we talked a minute ago about people having a problem with the terminology. The single mom by choice terminology always has sort of bothered me because it feels like I'm choosing to just be a single mom because I'm not wanting to be married or whatever, which some people do. And that's totally whatever. But it doesn't, to me, accurately describe my situation because I've heard now more recently the word solo mom. And I feel like that almost more accurately describes it. I didn't set out in life to be a single mom. I mean, most people don't, I don't think. It's just the circumstance. And I do love being a mom. But I don't really love being a single mom necessarily. I think there are aspects. I certainly have plenty of friends who tell me that having a husband's not all that it's like having another kid, but which I'm sure is true to some extent, but you know, so there are aspects of it that are fine, but yeah, sometimes I wish I had somebody else to help carry the load.
Yeah. I think that's very similar sentiment to lots of single moms.
Yeah.
So what do you love the least about being a mother? Sorry, what do you like least about being a mother?
Yeah. I really miss solid sleep. Even at this age, my boys still end up in my bed. I had to get a king size bed because they grew. They are in my bed every night and I miss sleeping through the night. I am not sorry that they are in my bed every night. They will not do that forever. So I am good with it, but yeah, man, I'm tired. So, and I feel like I'm old and tired. And I think the other thing I really don't like about it is I lived for myself for so long. I'm an only child. I can entertain myself alone very easily. I'm never bored. so I miss the lack of aloneness, I guess, and that kind of thing. Always having somebody in my space. Sometimes I'm like, where did you people come from? You're living in my house. I got weird people living in my house. So I think those are the kinds of things. But in general, those are silly things.
Mm-hmm. And what do you love most about being a mother?
Oh, they're just so precious. They're so precious. They are so, sometimes they'll be just insane. And then somebody will say, Mom, love you. And you're just, oh, okay. Go crazy. I mean, there's just so much love, and it's hard work raising up good little people, but man, it's cool to see how they think and to see how they learn and to help guide them and the questions they ask. And yeah, they're so fun. So fun. And they're at a good age right now, but every age has been, okay, probably not the very first newborn age, but every age has pretty much been fun. As you say, you can see their brains growing. You can see them as they're learning and making connections, and just fascinating. It's fun.
Yeah. So anything else, any other advice or anything else you'd like to add before we close?
I don't think so. I think I would just say, if you feel it in your heart, don't wait around. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't wait around as long as I had. Not recognizing that if I had waited, or if I had not waited the way I did, I would have different children. So I'm not sorry about that. I like the kids I have, but I think it's hard. These are hard decisions to make. It was a hard decision to get to, because you have to give up on other things. You have to give up what you thought and how you thought things would be, or how you wanted things to be willing to do something else, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Awesome. That's why I called my book and my website and podcast Motherhood Reimagined, because I believe so strongly in that sort of, it is this letting go and picking this different path. It's so completely different than what we thought. And that's hard.
It is. Yeah, it's a great term, the way that you've termed that, Motherhood Reimagined, because it's so true. It's just different. It's not wrong. It's just different.
Awesome.
And that's okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time. It's been so nice chatting. I really appreciate it.
You too. I appreciate it as well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome.
Thanks for listening to today's show. Before we go, I wanted to just give you some more details about my tribe membership, because the pricing will be changing soon. So right now I'm recruiting for my tribe signature level support groups. I have 3 groups: a pregnant and solo, thinkers triers, and an egg donor support group. So what do you get in a tribe signature level support group? So first of all, you get weekly video support group calls with all of the women in your group. And there's no more of a maximum of 10 women in any of those groups. And we meet on Zoom, and it's an hour to an hour and a half long. We talk about what's up for you and dive into a topic that feels of interest to everyone. It's really a way to be seen in your journey, process through all the emotional ups and downs, and get some practical advice. I think listening to other women who are at different stages than you is invaluable to get information and shortcut the process of getting pregnant by just hearing how it's going for everyone else. You also get a private classroom with those women on my community forum so that you guys can have private conversations about what's going on with you guys. And you get access to all my content. So I have a ton of content that I've created with worksheets, a lot of done-for-you research, a lot of self-study on the emotional aspects of this journey that you can read through and reflect. And finally, you get to be on my broader community forum with all the women in all the groups. So the price for that right now is only $59 a month, but it's going to be going up on April 30th. So if you want to be a founding member and get the founding member pricing, please go to my website, motherhoodreimagined.com, and follow the link to the membership site and sign up. You can use the coupon code FOUNDERMONTHLY, which is with a capital F, or FOUNDER6, and that's with a lowercase f. That will give you the discount. Those 2 different codes are for whether you decide you want to pay monthly or whether you want to pay for 6 months at a time and get an even lower rate. And I created a video in my Facebook group of the membership platform so you can see all the content and see what it would look like to join.
and get a sense of everything that's included. So I hope you'll join me, and please feel free to reach out to me anytime with questions. We can jump on a call if you'd like, or you can shoot me an email at Sarah@Motherhood Reimagined, and we can talk about whether or not it's a good fit for you. And finally, if a group doesn't sound like what you want, you can work with me as a Tribe VIP member. That's private coaching with me. You get 6 30-minute calls per month and unlimited voicemail access to me, as well as all my content on my Tribe membership and the community forum. So you can sign up for that on my website as well. That link is just going live now. It's a new program, so don't miss your chance. I'll only be taking a handful of people. I'm also still looking for more guests, so please head on over to my webpage and sign up to be a guest if you're interested. Or if you're an expert and you'd like to talk to us, we'd love to hear from you. Or if you have any suggestions about people I should interview, please pop on over to my Facebook group or shoot me an email at sarah@motherhoodreimagined.com. Thanks for joining me today. I look forward to being with you next week. Next week, I'm joined by Alex, who from the outset knew that she wanted to adopt and tells us all about her adoption journey with her daughter, who is now 6. Take care.